the soldiers,
aviateurs,
airmen,
mesdames et
sailors,
messieurs,
ladies and gentlemen.
je suis heureux de vous retrouver
I'm happy to see you again
ici,
here
dans la rade de Toulon, à bord de
in the Toulon harbor on top of this Bismuth landing helicopter dock. And I addressed you in January 1918 from here. That was on the 9th, or rather the 9th of November. It's not just any date. It tells us about adversity, about courage, about vision and sovereignty. It is the anniversary of the death of General de Gaulle. Courage in instant, vision of the future. This is what I would like to address today. Even though this building is surrounded by water, it is well protected. The harbor is magnificent. Mr. Mayor, on a calm day, let's make no mistakes. This is not such a quiet period. This is very stormy. We have war in Europe, and there are risks of escalations, abuses, global effects. And this war comes at the end of a decade of violence and extension of abuses in all domains. It also marks a jump, an unprecedented jump in a hybrid universe, just as bad as war. And some powers have managed to escalate those nefarious practices in the digital world. Aggression against Ukraine could lead to geostrategic disputes we should not accept as a fatality. We do not intend to be passive, and we will stand up to them. But this is not a new development. We had identified those developments in the 2017 strategic review and in 2021 when it was updated. We identified adaptation to be conducted so that we can protect ourselves, protect our sovereignty in these new conflicts, in those spaces, in space, in information, digital space, in the air, on the sea, and on the seabed in more recent times, and to face up to what is called of new intensity attacks and hybrid attacks. So we made commitments pursuant to this analysis and to its update. And that was a major effort. It is a rearming of the nation that we decided 5 years ago. We feel gratified. I feel gratified to be able to tell you today that those commitments were met thanks to your work, your commitment, and thanks to MPs, and I'd like to thank the president of the various commissions to be here and to have engaged with a number of MPs on these issues. But since from budget to implementation, commitments were applied. They were held, and the 2023 budgetary bill is witness to that. I'm proud of this, and our forces deserve this. This is a vital effort, and we must keep it up because much of our capability had to be fixed, and now we have to build for the future. What's going on in Ukraine, what the stakes are, do not just illustrate current developments. It means they are speeding up in a massive way. This is clarification of developments. Tens of thousands of deaths, abuses, upscales, new weapons, old new weapons and new weapons as well, and also because This war also clarifies the state of the world where we live, the weakening of taboos and standards, wide appetites. And this is a dangerous moment where former balances are contested and a new balance has not been achieved. This is a tragic acceleration, and it made it necessary that we should update this thinking. We have gone through that exercise after the strategic compass that was pulled through by the EU and finalized under the French chairmanship of the EU and the NATO strategic scheme that we initiated in December 2019. So it flowed logically that we should propose an update of how we see the threat, how our strategic analysis of the world, and so that those new budgetary laws could be pushed through. So during the summer, we had to respond quickly because the situation was serious. So we set up a new national strategic review that will be the basis for military budgets. I'd like to thank, in this connection, I'd like to thank the Minister of Defense, the Secretary General for Defense and National Armament, the Ministry for Europe and Foreign Affairs, with exceptional marshalling of your talents. I'd like to thank all MPs of commissions that were consulted for this review and that brought us their know-how, their experience, and enriched the contents. As always, the stakes in this kind of work is to avoid a given abuse, to draw lessons from the present for a future that will never come about. In armies, we program over several years, but when we program on weapons that will be with us for several decades. All of you know this well. I met a few manufacturers a few days ago, and I saw that they were going through those investments as well. So we have to be expeditious, and we have to come out with clear visions. We have to meet both today's and tomorrow's problems. And at every moment, we should be concerned that the army of 2030, we shall have to build it. Men and women and capabilities. It should not be the ideal army that we wanted in 2022, but the 2030 army necessary to developments and risks, what we anticipate and what we can expect. And this is why all this work is so precious. In 2017, the army model that I came across was born in 2001, when the world went from anti-terrorism, from a logic of striking hard, and anything could go. So this has not gone down the drain. Terrorism has not gone down the drain, and we keep fighting it. We'll keep on fighting it. But conditions have changed drastically. We have fixed our armies, strengthened our models in order to face up to current and future challenges. And some of current challenges will stay with us. And in particular, when peace is back in Ukraine, we will have to draw all the consequences. We'll have to rebuild a security architecture that be new and a renovated framework of stability and arms control. And Europe will have to step up. But there are also future challenges. the risk of a high-intensity war between stations, increased tensions in Asia, the general use of drones, even where we don't see them so much today. The trivialization of missiles, we can see the very first effects in Arabia, in the Emirates, and in Kiev. The lowering of digital thresholds, quantums, artificial intelligence, hypervelocity, and a general environment with health issues as well as climate issues. I just back from the COP27 in Egypt. We should not understate the security stakes involved in this climate change. In this world, and that was not the case today when we tried to secure peace by interdependence. Currently, we want independence because of new issues. Because of all this, we must anticipate. We need a real, full-fledged revolution of how we prejudge conflicts. And revolutions have accelerated from a technological viewpoint over the last 5 years, and this will be the case in the future as well. So to anticipate all of this is necessary, so that in 2030 we have the armies for the next decade and not for the previous decade. And if we want to go one step further, that's also what we need to do in order not to have just the armies, but also the defense industry, the defense and the society that contribute to sovereignty. Because one of the teachings that we currently can see is that we have to remobilize all of the forces of our country, businesses, men and women, and put them to the service of our sovereignty. This is what I've been saying over the last few months. So, what is the vision that we should have in terms of this national strategic vision? We want to be an independent, respected power, an agile power. We want to be a power at the core of the European autonomous strategy in Europe, also with an anchoring with the Atlantic Ocean. We want to be to step up to our responsibilities. We want to be a reliable partner, displaying solidarity to preserve multilateralism and international law. So, clearly, we have made some achievements. Confirmation of the current ALPM, the current budget, we will consolidate and strengthen. On the basis of what I just said, intuitions that were confirmed over the last 5 years. First, how we see the situation. We want this has to be robust and sovereign. We want more on information in order to be able to predict and understand. Investments that we made to consolidate human resources and technological resources, our autonomous capability in terms of information. This was more than necessary than ever, and we're going to strengthen this. Also, speed of commitment and implementation. Let me remind you that we have a strength, institutional, organizational, and political. We are able to decide in this very moment and to implement as no other power in Europe can do. We've showed this with Saval, we've showed it with Hamilton, we showed it again with the decisions that were made and the deployment to Romania a few months ago. This is a strength of our forces. It is even more so in the current geopolitical context I just mentioned. And then we have the nuclear deterrent, which is the backbone of our security. Credible, modern, and its size is just sufficient. It will still remain based on simple principles so that we can have freedom of action and we can be preserved from a major aggression. It prevents any state aggression against our vital interests, wherever they may come from and whatever shape it may take. Those vital interests, I'm responsible to lay them down, to update them. And as I said before, 2 years ago at the War School, and I'm fully sure of what I say, so I'd like to say it again. Today, more than yesterday, the vital interests of France have a European dimension. Our nuclear forces, because they exist, contribute to the security of France and of Europe. To say this again is necessary, because there's a lot of discussions, trivial discussions on this, when we should be very sober in terms of our doctrine in order to be credible. But we should not forget that France does have a nuclear deterrent. And let's not be over-dramatic in some of our discussions. To be able to defend our territory, both in Europe and overseas, faced with all the new threats, faced with cyber attacks, this is at the very heart of our strategy. So this has to be confirmed. As you know, Europe is no longer can be attacked by drones and missiles. We have to take that on board, because states and non-state opponents have the technological means to strike us from remote locations. I know, I've read that some in Europe are thinking this through. But the aerial defense of our continent is a strategic issue. We have to display solidarity, and there are many ramifications to this. And that can not be summed up by the promotion of our businesses or third-party businesses not dwelling on the European dimension. So we should be able to include, we need an in-depth approach on the basis of a strategic approach that would involve all of our defense resources. So we make proposals and we'll make contributions. We should also have available over the next 5 years world-class digital defense. As regards overseas territories, they're one of our strengths. We have a permanent presence on several continents. We have sovereign rights in all oceans. We are French almost all over the world. Overseas territories, whether they be on the continent or islands, are the very basis for the global power status of France. In the Caribbean, in the Indian Ocean, in the Pacific Ocean, in the Americas. And let's not forget our poles. Those lands, those seas, some of our compatriots live there and live from there, and they're exposed to threats. And we have to make relevant adjustments to our strategy. That's what we will do. We are resolute to guarantee the security in regions which are sometimes the theater fit for fait accompli operations, but we will not yield. And this will be based on our sovereignty, but also on the increased attention that we focus on new threats. In Europe, Europe will be our priority area, and we will keep on being both the rock and the needle. Rock because we are the only power with a nuclear deterrent in continental Europe, and a needle in order to push further its prosperity, its vision, and to contribute through our defense capability to NATO security. So the agenda for European defense is an achievement of the last 5 years. Our strategy, our vision, instruments, achievements have borne fruit. This is true for our operations. We invented a new grammar with innovative operations, Agenor, Irignon, and so on. And also an operational culture that we worked on with the EU intervention forces, as well as in the Sahel. We have a strategic approach with the Strategic Compass, which is a white book for European defense, and that was concluded in last March. And I'd like to mention the European Facility of Peace that was created on our initiative in 2021 that currently finances the transfer of military equipment to Africa and Ukraine, among other places. And also the so-called Versailles agenda to strengthen our sovereignty, reduce our dependence, and secure our supplies. And finally, supporting defense industry through the EU facility to strengthen our defense capability through joint acquisitions. Looking back 5 years ago, this is a mental revolution that took place. It is a deep revolution. For some of our partners, overwhelming. However, this doesn't mean that the job is over. Far from it. All of what I said means it has to be consolidated, it has to be confirmed. We need more rigor in European implementation. But Europe also means partnerships with different countries, and we want to strengthen this in a very significant way, substantial way. Those partnerships must be envisaged because many of those partners have joined us in a French approach to sovereignty and European defense. First, we want to strengthen our bonds with Germany. It is an indispensable partner. We are committed with them on deeply structural programs. We want to combine our forces. We want to combine our businesses and also operational excellence and strategic excellence. And from the balance of this partnership depends the success of the European project to some extent. And in this connection, I'd like to have more achievements over the next few weeks. I also want to strengthen some deeply innovative partnerships that were launched those last few years. For instance, CAMO, launched with Belgium, so that we can create a strategic intimacy, a capable strategy, and to advance in a clearer way. We saw the strength of this in the deployments of the last few months. We also must We need a robust new partnership with Italy, Greece, several partners with which we concluded important agreements, such as Croatia. And we want to make proposals to Eastern Europe, Baltic countries, Northern Europe countries that are waiting for us. They want new forms of cooperation. Here again, we need capability, but also strategy. It is our duty in the exercises that will be conducted. We will have to propose those innovative forms of operation. Of course, we have to rely on our own forces, our credibility, but also our current deployments in Romania, such as in Estonia. Those European partners, allies, know that they can rely on France. Our partnership with the UK should also be updated. I want to have a more active dialogue on our operations, our nuclear capability on the hybrid area, and to renew the bonds that we deserve, since we are friends and allies. There will be a bilateral summit in the next 6 months. Let's not forget the essential character of Eastern Mediterranean and the Balkans. Here again, whether they belong to NATO or not, whether they belong to the EU or not, we'll have to build new partnerships with those countries. All those efforts will contribute to the strength of NATO, even though they may not all join. This alliance is an essential framework for collective security, and we can see that from the current developments. This has a Euro-Atlantic significance. At a time when the US is pivoting to Asia, we've shown over the last few years that European defense strengthens NATO, does not weaken it, as some people said. And then it anchors it in its vocation, and it is a key component, as the Rome Declaration signed in the fall of 2021 showed so clearly. In this alliance, we will keep on playing the role of an exemplary ally, capable of being a key nation, and we want to contribute to the defense of our partners and the eastern side of Europe, if necessary. This is necessary for the future of the European project. Also, we want to support our foreign partners. We want to provide security from Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, the Gulf, and the Horn of Africa. This applies to in the Indo-Pacific, where as early as the spring of 2018, we proposed a new and deep and innovative strategy. And then 2 years on, this was the inspiration for a European strategy. We want that circle of solidarity to widen from the Emirates, that are a reliable and important partner in all areas, also involving Djibouti. We want to keep our presence there, and we have a history, both a history and a future there, all the way to India, where we've managed in all areas to build new partnerships, and we'll keep on supplementing those partnerships all the way down to Southeast Asia and the Pacific Ocean. This is a collective strategy, security strategy, that will be significant at a time when the world is looking at a major confrontation tomorrow. A strategy where France is called upon to defend its own land, and also for its partners, its friends in the region. We are called upon to defend freedom and sovereignty. So you will understand, this is a new analysis of the situation, of threats, of our role. This should lead us, and you'll see that over the next few weeks and months, it should lead us to adjust the format of our armies, our major contracts and programs, our operational objectives. All of this contributes to those objectives, so that, on the one hand, we can secure the defense of the homeland and our citizens, and also to be a key partner, a structuring partner for Europe, for Africa, in the Middle East, in order to build up partner army coalitions. The next military budget will enable us to do that in all respects. Now, on top of all this, there are areas where we will have to act very differently. There are areas we'll have to make up, almost, and then areas we'll have to strengthen, as I committed to a few months ago when I ran for president. The first of that guidance, orientation, is the implementation of a role of providing security to prevent conflicts in regions where we have deployments. Traditional FOBs, where we have deployed our forces, sometimes this was seen as a threat to sovereignty. It was used by enemies in terms of disinformation. We'll have to reinvent all this in space and time. How do we do this? We will build this new doctrine I mentioned. We need this innovative framework. And over the next few months, we'll have to overhaul our methods. We are committed to our partners in Africa. It will have to be in terms of the logic of supporting them. In order to get there, we'll need a lighter framework, cooperation framework. So over the next few days, we will initiate a new phase of exchange with our partners in Africa, regional organizations, in order to change the missions and the status of our bases in Sahel and Western Africa, so that we can build with our partners organizations and instruments that are common and that can support the local armies. That strategy will be finalized before 6 months, after all those consultations we want to push through. It is necessary. It is one of the consequences we draw from what we lived over the last few years in the Sahel. Also, interventions should be scoped in time right from the beginning. We should not overstay our welcome. And it is for this reason I decided, in consultation with our partners, to make official the end of Barkhane. Our military support to African countries in that region will go on, but on the basis of new principles that we define, that we lay down with them. They will be implemented on the basis of requirements expressed by our partners in terms of equipment, partnership, support, and strategic intimacy. But mostly, this will mean supporting the civilian efforts deployed by African partners to meet civil tensions, economic weaknesses that are abused by terrorist groups. So this partnership is meaningful if it is a real partnership that will meet explicit requirements coming from our African friends. It supplements economic, political, and administrative partnerships in those countries. We have to rethink how we go about, not just in our deployments abroad, but also in the homeland. And in this connection, the general economics of the Sentinel operation can be reviewed with other ministries to secure the freedom of armies and meet the new security challenges. The second orientation we must go through is to have a better capture of developments. We saw how in Africa, and that's what I meant a few moments ago, in Africa and elsewhere, often upon the instigation of external players, disinformation was implanted, was multiplied by trolls, all those beasts that were well integrated in interventions by our rivals in order to dispute our security and our soft power, in order to propagate an appetite for violence, to manipulate civil populations, and to increase even more the hybrid character of conflicts. We will not stand by the wayside. We have to detect those developments. We have to put a stop to it. And as the democracy that we are, we should anticipate this and use it in physical and digital areas. We must convince This is part of our digital requirements. But we have to look at review our ways and means in this new context. We should not be proud, but we should not be overly modest in terms of looking at our posture. We don't want to be overly defensive. We're not passive. So influence will be a strategic function with substantial resources, with inter-ministry coordination, and a central role played by the Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs. Finally, and I don't claim to be exhaustive in this list, in drawing up this list, we should reaffirm the moral strength of France. I said that in July in Brienne. The time has come to mobilize even more in order to strengthen collectively when we face with those historical challenges. Let me use those words. We have to go on to a warning stance. I said a few months ago we should pivot our economy, adapt to new context, push our defense economy to new efforts. So work has begun. I know you are always mobilized in those exceptional circumstances. When we come across a high-intensity conflict, this would be playing on a very different scale. And so we would need an industrial and economic mobilization. We have to think it through in advance. This applies to our civilian infrastructure, networks. We must strengthen their protection. With the aggression on Ukraine at a time when some powers don't feel limited by the law of war. Going further, we should think in terms of our capability to mobilize the country as a whole. In a permanent way, we must be vigilant and face up to a deep crisis. We saw that during the COVID crisis, not just a health issue, not just a health challenge, but a kind of metaphorical conflict. The homeland was attacked from all sides. Infrastructure was challenged. Armies at that time showed that they were remarkably capable of planning battlefield hospitals, transfer patients by trains, flights, and so on. They showed their logistic capability, their mindset, and their remarkable practice. And the whole of our society should share in this. A resilient mind, a planning mind, should be found in all our ministries. We should take on board all the new challenges, environmental, informational, cultural, military, psychological challenges, because many of our opponents have done so. And if we remained weak in some of those areas, it would jeopardize our capability to resist aggressions, or even our capability to implement some of our operations, because a nation is a whole. If you look even more deeply, it is the moral fiber of the nation that should be encouraged. This is not about adding the moral strengths of Frenchmen. It is the product of those individual strengths. And this is why I rely much on the integration of reserves in terms of civic service and in terms of our great project of a universal service. But I will elaborate on this over the next few weeks. To be committed to a common good for each citizen, each man and each woman. This is an individual opportunity and a collective opportunity as well. It should be the glue that will strengthen the nation and society. These are the real stakes. This is our goal. We're not going to militarize society, but we want to strengthen the spirit of resilience, its moral fiber, and to bring together all those civilian and military strengths in order to defend our sovereignty. This is the broad outline of the ambition we have with this strategic national review. Much has been done, but much still remains to be done.
Après avoir sollicité les veilleurs, c'est maintenant le tour du timonier.
We had to be watchful, but now we have to drive ahead. We need a budgetary bill, we needed to be up to the challenges, and we needed to be consistent. So this is a huge challenge. This bill will be sent to Parliament early next year. It will portray, through a number of articles, through a lot of figures, it will have to portray a united, strong, autonomous France in terms of its appreciation, and sovereign in terms of its decisions, respected for its status as having a nuclear deterrent, an ally of Europe, an ally of NATO, a credible and reliable partner, a France that looks quietly at its future and is in control of that future. And we should be confident because we know the high quality of our forces, and the ceremony that we saw just showed this. We should be self-confident because of the strength of our defense industry that showed its capability in difficult circumstances, and it was pushed through by the DGA, the procurement agency, and also the Ministry of Defense that contributes to that national effort. And we should be self-confident because we trust in our nation, in its moral fiber, in its resoluteness. It is French values that mean that our country, at the threshold of those worlds, will carry and will always carry very high and very clearly its ambitions.
Vive la République!
Vive la République, vive la France!